Apparently he's going to be charged with murder in the state of New York.
You're fighting extradition for him to New York. Why are you fighting that? It seems like it's inevitable that he will be sent to New York.
I argued today at the extradition hearing. I still haven't received details about the charges. The concept of American justice is a presumption of innocence, and until you're proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and I've seen zero evidence at this point.
Luigi's defense attorney now talking to the media, and he is talking a lot. He had a full press briefing at his office that was taking place after we learned he was on the case. And he's saying, wearing masks is not a crime in America. You're allowed to do that. And what we have heard from him is skepticism about the evidence and the charges. And so he also showed up with Caitlin Collins. I got the full segment here that we'll listen to, but he also gave a 17-minute press conference out at his office and was taking questions on a lot of things. But the problem is he doesn't really have a lot of information yet. And so he keeps saying, over and over that we're processing the case. A lot of stuff is pending, and I really can't answer a lot until I review more evidence. So here was the exchange with Caitlin Collins trying to dig into some of that.
Questions about what was happening in Mangione's life behind those smiling photos that we've now seen on social media, and also questions about an injury that he suffered in 2023 and what happened to him ever since. My lead source tonight is the attorney who is representing Luigi Mangione, Thomas Dickey, and it's great to have you here, sir. I just want to say thank you. I know this has been moving very quickly, and you said earlier you were retained today to represent him. And so can you just tell us, how's your client doing in jail tonight?
Well, Caitlin, thank you for having me. As I've been saying all day, I tell everybody to use their common sense. Here we have a young man who is incarcerated without bail, as you alluded to, and apparently he's going to be charged with murder in the state of New York. So if you use your common sense, I'm sure it's concerning. That's all I can say.
Well, you've been an attorney for decades. What did you make of the way he went into court earlier, that outburst that he had?
I'm still analyzing that. I was actually on the other side of the wall when he came in, so I didn't hear all that statement. I've been busy all day, so I haven't had a chance to analyze that. So, yeah, I'm not going to comment on something, unfortunately, until I can have a chance to hear that in detail and break that down.
Well, being on the other side of it, you were inside that courtroom, of course, and we learned about what happened in there. You're fighting extradition for him to New York. Why are you fighting that? It seems like it's inevitable that he will be sent to New York.
That may be, but again, the Constitution, and I know I keep bringing up that word today, lest we forget about that. But the Constitution gives you certain rights, and we need to make informed decision. And the law permits, and the Constitution permits, that somebody in Luigi's position has the opportunity to look at evidence, make sure the government follows through a process, and that's what we're doing. So again, I've been in this case probably about 12, 14 hours, maybe whatever, give or take, and I haven't seen a speck of evidence at all. I argued today at the extradition hearing. I still haven't received details about the charges that he's facing in New York. I heard your reduction and looking into that. But so we as lawyers need to make informed decisions, and we need to get our hands and our eyes on some evidence.
Yeah, I'm looking at the charges right here. It's murder, a loaded firearm, 2 counts of that, a forged instrument, and criminal possession of a weapon as well. Those are the charges from New York. As you're fighting extradition, you're not actually arguing that the authorities in New York have the wrong guy, are you?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence that they have the right guy. I can tell you that much. So I don't know anything about that. Identification issues that are present. And so I don't, like I said, this is why I need to look at some things, and they need to convince me. I try to remind people, and it's a shame that we forget about this presumption of innocence that the Constitution gives all Americans. And people don't worry about the Constitution until they're facing charges or accusations against them. Then trust me, Caitlin, the Constitution matters.
Of course it does. And yes. I know you highlighted earlier and emphasized innocent until proven guilty. I understand that. But I read the police report from when he was arrested. He initially gave them a false name. And then when they asked to confirm his identity, he said that he shouldn't have lied to them about it. That would seem to be that they do have the right person, given that he had a gun on him. He had fake New Jersey ID that he used to check into a hostel. Is none of that enough for you personally to know that they do have the right guy?
What a question. Actually, you're right, Caitlin. You're right. I guess case closed. Well done. My client's guilty. guess we better call it an interview. I'll give him a phone call and we'll just take the plea deal tomorrow since you've now busted me. But this is a curious thing for this defense attorney to be doing because the case is so new and fresh, right? He has to anticipate he's going to get these questions. And what's he going to say about it?
Well, first of all, that's a piece of paper. I know you probably can't tell, but I'm 5'6". I could write on that I'm 6'5" and all this other kind of stuff. So that's written on paper. What's nice about the law is we'll have a hearing. I can cross-examine witnesses and find out, look at reports and find out what they have and what they don't have. So again, that's just written on a criminal complaint. Without getting into the details of that, I don't see any evidence of a forgery. They're going to have to at least prove a prima facie case, which is less than the beyond a reasonable doubt. But I need to see these things. Right now, I have one piece of paper. And again, so
one piece of
Mr.
paper.
Dick, have you asked to see this?
If that's the Pennsylvania complaint, I have a copy of that. I
But
was
have you
handed
asked to
that
see the
today,
evidence?
Near the end. We have a hearing coming up on, I believe, the 23rd. I apologize if I'm in error about that because there's a bunch of dates that's been flying around today. But yes, and like I said, tomorrow I'm going to reach out to the district attorney. It's my intentions and to see how much we can see of this stuff.
All right, so there's a lot of stuff that happens when a criminal case is in this phase, a ton of stuff. The defense attorney will be brought onto the case. So let's just backtrack, okay? This guy gets arrested. His family is totally lost. They go, our son just got arrested. What do? We need to find him a lawyer. He doesn't have any resources or help. He's probably not in a good state of mind. So the family goes and scrambles. They find a lawyer. They come back. They find this guy. This is all hypothetical. I don't know if this actually happened, but probably did. They go find this lawyer. They hire him. And then he comes crashing into the case, right? And I've been on his side, getting a phone call. Hey, my son just got picked up. Going to be in court. Can you figure out what's going on? Yep. All right, go right down there. Courts are moving him around. This is a complicated case because he's in one state. Now they're going to try to extradite him to another state. But the attorney, one of the first things they're doing is filing a notice of appearance. And what I think they're kind of talking past each other, but Caitlin Collins is asking about the original documents, like the probable cause statement, the initial criminal complaint that was filed in Pennsylvania about the weapons charges, and like the initial filings. Now, I think what he's talking about when he mentioned the December 23rd date would probably be an initial pretrial conference, something, whatever they call it in New York, an initial pretrial proceeding where for that time he would file his notice of appearance and his motion for discovery. And then on that date, he would be able to argue and demand that the disclosure be provided to him then, right? So the initial filings are all coming out. The notice of appearance, letting the court know he's got an attorney, you're entering a plea of not guilty, and then the discovery process starts in earnest. And then that's when you get those big tranches of documents that we've talked about here, like in the Ryan Ruth case, the Trump assassin case, where he's getting terabytes and gigabytes of data, right? Everything they gathered up from the search warrants and the seizure of the backpack and all of that stuff. That's all of the evidence that I believe that the attorney is talking about. But Caitlin Collins is talking about the initial documents. And we do have the initial arrest warrant that has been now published from New York, but we do not have, as far as I've seen yet, the Pennsylvania criminal complaint or the New York criminal complaint. And again, largely that's probably because he was not seen yet. And then after he's seen, we can expect more documents. He was seen yesterday. So we'll see more documents become published and released today. But he's seen, it sounds like just one criminal complaint, maybe not even the arrest warrant. And it's like very chaotic when you're on his scene. You have to identify where is the guy. The courts and the people are not helpful in responding to you. And they just say, basically, we're going through our process, right? We're going to book him and we're going to process him. And then the attorney's trying to skid in there and intervene in the process, and they don't make it easy.
So today was not about that. So we have not had the opportunity to do that today.
And I know you were also unhappy that he was denied bail. Of course, prosecutors were arguing that he is a risk. They either have to talk about, being a flight risk or a risk to the community. Obviously, he was captured about 250 miles from Manhattan. But you said you were retained today. One big question that everyone has is, are you being paid by his family to represent him?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that.
Well, can you say that it's not his family who is asking you to retain him or retaining you to represent him?
I'm not going to comment on that. I've been retained. I'm not court appointed. I've been retained, and that's all I can tell you.
We had seen reports earlier that there was, people were inundating you with offers to help pay for his legal bills. Is that accurate? I have
received some emails. I have not seen them personally, but my understanding from my staff is people are doing that.
That people are reaching out to you and offering to help pay for his legal bills.
Club.
That's correct.
Would you accept those offers? I mean, I imagine you maybe have, I don't know, have you ever gotten that before?
Nah, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't.
Why do you think you would not accept that?
I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable about that. So I don't know. I haven't given
rules?
that much thought, but I'm not looking, obviously my client appreciates the support that he has, but I don't know. I'd have to look in, but it just doesn't sit right with me, really.
Why do you think they're offering?
I don't know. People, you talk about, the Supreme Court says, all these rich billionaires can give all kind of money to candidates, and that's free speech. So maybe these people are exercising their right to free speech and saying that's the way they're supporting my client.
You noted there that you said he appreciates the support that he's getting. Did he acknowledge that when you had a conversation with him earlier about how we have seen this intense public interest in him himself?
Yeah, unfortunately, can't get into anything that my client and I talk about. So reveal anything that's attorney-client privilege in any conversation that occurs between he and I is simply that.
I understand that, but could you describe just what his demeanor is? You're talking about putting yourself in his shoes, but, did he seem nervous? Did he seem calm? Or how did he come off to you when you met him?
Well, and if we have a minute, I do want to go back to that bail situation if we have a quick second. But anyway, been telling people all day to use their common sense. Here's a young man who's, apparently going to be or has been charged with a very serious, one of the most serious offenses a person could be charged with. Yeah. He's in prison without bail, as you previously mentioned. And so, I think common sense would say, he's concerned.
Do you plan on representing him only in Pennsylvania or also in New York?
Well, that will depend. I got to see how this process pans out. And if, in fact, I were asked to do that, I certainly would consider that and probably do that.
Thomas Dickey, I know you've had a very busy day. Thank you for your time tonight and for joining us. And I hope you'll come back and join us in the future.
I will, Caitlin. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
All right. So interesting stuff. So they'll be fighting extradition, trying to prevent him from leaving Pennsylvania and going back to New York. But that's a tall order. Okay. We've been through this story before, and we were covering this during the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. And his original attorney was saying that they were going to fight extradition. And of course, that did not go anywhere. States, we have interstate compacts, we have full faith and credit. And so states just hand these people off pretty easily. Now, we'll see if his fight is successful or where it leads. Maybe he'll be the attorney who is also on the New York case. But it's an interesting interview. And aren't they a little bit frustrating? Don't you want Caitlin Collins to just ask him, did your client shoot that guy? Did he shoot that guy? What did he do? Does he deny this? Yes or no? Right? Pretty simple questions. And I was waiting for the defense attorney to say, my client is innocent and we reject all allegations against, brought by the state, and we maintain my client's innocence, and we're going to fight to prove his innocence in the court of law. Something like that. But didn't hear any of that, actually. So, I don't know. Instead, he was very much in processing mode. And later on in the day, or this may have been earlier on the day, not real sure when, but he also gave a press conference at his office, and here's what that sounded like.
Earlier today, you talked about the masks possibly being related to coronavirus. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I don't know where you all are from, but I still see people wearing masks. They say numerous masks. A lot of times when you buy masks, you got to buy them. They don't. I guess you can buy them individually, but every time I bought them, they come in boxes. So I don't know. I'll tell you, that's not a crime. It's not a crime.
It's not a crime. All right, so it is not a crime to wear a mask. That is certainly true. And here was a little bit more of that press conference.
I'll hear and try to do the best we can. Okay? All right?
Did you meet with the defendant earlier?
Yes, I did, and I'm pleased with our relationship. I think we've made a strong bond, and I'm looking forward to moving forward, helping him out.
How will you approach it?
I really don't want to get into that.
Is he saying he's innocent at this point?
There we go.
He has indicated pleas of not guilty. The only charges that we've seen thus far have been the ones here in Pennsylvania, and we have pled not guilty to those charges. And we'll
What's his state of mind?
I really can't get into that. That's too speculative. I'm not going to get into that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear from here. You said he has said he's innocent so far?
Yeah, we pled not guilty, at least to the charges in Pennsylvania. Like I said, I'm not aware of any actual charges in New York. If you were in the hearing earlier, there was a proceeding.
So that's different, okay? Is he saying he's innocent? It's different than saying we entered a plea of not guilty. Like, you have to enter a plea of not guilty in order to take the case forward. I mean, if you want to just plead guilty there, you can, but the case is over, you're guilty, you go to jail and all the things. So if you're going to defend yourself in any way, shape, or form, you have to enter a plea of not guilty, and you can always change your plea later. Right? It's sometimes confusing to people. Sometimes people would come into my office and they'd say, well, I actually did that thing. I say, okay, that's fine. Thanks for telling me. But we need to enter a plea of not guilty so we can get the evidence. And whether the thing happened or not, we got to see if the government, has the evidence there. And if they don't, whatever the thing was, we can have a conversation about getting you a better deal or resolving this in a manner that's, beneficial for you. So, then we can change the plea later. But we want to get our bearing straight so that your life is not wrecked. So we go through that process, and that again, is not an indicator that you're automatically innocent. Like a lot of people take DUI plea deals, but after they hire a lawyer and they go through a process of entering a plea of not guilty, reviewing the evidence, getting, let's say, a super extreme DUI reduced down to a regular DUI or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily convey innocence.
Where they introduced some documents, which, as I complained about, didn't have enough information for me. So we're looking forward to, getting that additional information.
When did that plea happen? It's not something that I was aware of.
Okay, well, hopefully, again, I was not at the arraignment yesterday. I hope he pled not guilty. I assume that that's what happened. But today, when I entered my appearance, and for the record, he's pleading not guilty to those offenses.
So he is, I was at the hearing, he did not say that he was not guilty or make that plea. So right now, though, you're telling us that he is pleading not guilty.
That is correct.
So he doesn't say you are under the impression, or you're trying to defend the client on the fact that he is not the shooter?
Listen, I haven't seen any evidence that says that he's the shooter. So
Another-
that's, like I said earlier, and I wasn't kidding around. A couple of things. If you're going to report something,
It's another good
report
answer from a
accurately.
lawyer. I haven't seen any
Remember,
evidence.
and this is not just a small thing, the fundamental.
That's the same tactic that the Congress people that we covered yesterday on the show were saying. Have you seen any evidence of another shooter? No, I haven't seen any evidence of another shooter. It's because I haven't seen any evidence at all, because Homeland and Secret Service are not giving us anything.
The concept of American justice is the presumption of innocence, and until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and I've seen zero evidence at this point.
Well,
and so I'm not even aware of what any charges.
I'm sorry, that's just regarding the extradition.
you're going to see a lot
Well,
of
the
evidence.
hearing
at
today
some
was
point.
the extradition, so we're going to take one step at a time. It's a long process. Can be a
The
long
photos
process.
the police released, the NYPD release of him.
I'm sorry?
The photos the NYPD release of your client.
I don't have any control over what the NYPD does, and if they release something, I hope I can get my hands on them, and if you guys get them, send them to me. I'd appreciate it.
Clarify something, you pled for him not guilty in the state of Pennsylvania about the charges here. Can you when did that happen?
Well, he has a hearing coming up. I believe it's the 20-something. I can't recall. A lot happened today. And so until they haven't even had a prima facie case established yet. So to have a prima facie case established before the case can move on to the Court of Common Pleas. The burden's always government, thank God. And that's their burden, and they're going to have to produce some evidence, and we're anxious to see it.
Understanding that you have said you have not seen charges coming out of New York yet, if and when there are, and you have seen them, will you be pleading not guilty to those as well?
That would be my expectation. That certainly would be my advice.
Your client's demeanor the past 2 days at the arraignment and again today at the hearing, at some points he was smiling, laughing. You even had to actually tell him to stop talking. What is his...
Smiling and laughing, huh?
Well,
he seems outspoken.
I said earlier, use your common sense. Put yourself and you or a loved one in that position. It's, natural, I think, to go through many emotional states. As far as him not talking, as long as I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to do all the talking. My client's not going to say anything.
A quick question about process. I was also at the hearing last night. I don't remember any plea being asked for or entered.
As long as he hasn't pled guilty, that's all I care about. So.
In the Blair County case, just not the.
Well, I'm telling you, as his lawyer, he didn't have any lawyer of record, and he didn't have any representation until I got involved this afternoon. And I'm telling you, he's pleading not guilty to each and every.
When does that plea normally happen?
Like I said, normally what happened last night at the informal arraignment, which is at the magisterial district judge.
So is he telling you this is all some sort of awful mistake?
I'm not going to talk about anything he's told me.
How do you end up in Altoona?
I'm not going to talk about that.
Has he been able to contact his family since?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into that either.
Can you tell us when you were hired?
I can say sometime prior to the hearing this afternoon.
So you were hired and not appointed by the court?
That is correct.
If Governor Reachel provides this governor's extradition thing, does that change the timetable here? You still have the right to a habeas hearing, don't you?
Yes, sir, we do. Like I said, and I'm not trying to be, it's 24, I'm not trying to be a smart ass or anything, but when we've got to wait until we see things. When things happen, we'll react to that and proceed accordingly.
All right, so good stuff from the defense attorney. Still trying to get his bearings straight. As I mentioned, it's very chaotic when all this stuff is happening, especially when you've got multiple prosecutors who are all filing different things in multiple jurisdictions, and they're not going to generally be very helpful. So he's going to get his bearings straight. We'll keep our eyes on him. Now, meanwhile, over on Fox, they brought out a roommate of this guy, Luigi, and here's what he said when he was talking to Jesse Waters.
Did this guy do drugs?
Absolutely none that I was aware of. We were roommates for about 6 months at Surf Break co-living, and the entire time that he lived at Surf Break, he was a great community member. He kind of followed by our values and our ethics to leave things better than you found them. He was always contributing, taking care of other people, and even after he moved out, he came and hung out and contributed to the community, spearheaded a book club. He and I became closer friends, working out, going to yoga classes, playing volleyball. You know, he's the kind of guy who was doing his best to take care of himself, despite having some severe back pain and, you know, a severe issue.
So he had the back pain, but was doing yoga and volleyball and messing around like that. Was this affecting his sex life?
So he was athletic as long as he could be. I know there were days and perhaps even a week at a time where he was bedridden. So he was doing what he could when he could. I couldn't comment about his sex life or, you know, any of our roommates' sex life, just out of respect for their privacy.
I totally understand. So did he ever mention anything about the Unabomber or any other radical ideas?
So I mentioned one of the great ways he contributed to the Surf Break community was by spearheading a book club. And he presented a bunch of interesting books to read. I think we started with Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And a few texts in, I actually proposed that we read, it's kind of half joke, but read the Unabomber Manifesto. I always wanted to read it, but never got around to it. So that was my suggestion. We had a normal discussion, debate around it. Nothing that stood out at the time. No anger, no a special affinity towards it. Just, you know, thought-provoking discussion.
You suggested reading Ted Kaczynski's book. Why were you interested in that?
I have an academic background, and I really enjoy reading just about anything, different perspectives, right, left, middle, progressive, things about ancients, the future, and wanted to understand a little bit more about what he wrote, why he wrote it, and maybe some historical context around that.
Okay, there's a lot of academic books. That's just interesting that tickled your fancy. Did you turn him on to the Unabomber? It sounds like.
Jesse's kind of interesting fella, isn't he? All right, so he answers some questions about Ted Kaczynski. The guy obviously was interested in it, and they had a conversation about it. Now, we also do have the arrest warrant, and here is what this one looked like. You can see we grabbed this one, and here are the charges. This is the arrest warrant from Luigi Mangione. And here are the charges. Murder in the second degree. This is out of New York. So people of New York versus Luigi Mangione. 3-pager. Detective Yusuf Dems. 5 charges. Murder, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. 2 counts of that. Criminal possession of a forged instrument. Criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. Telling us on or about December 4th at 6:44 a.m. outside 1335 Avenue of Americas in the county and state of New York, the defendant, Luigi, with the intent to cause the death of another person, caused the death of such person, possessed a loaded firearm with the intent to use it, possessed a loaded firearm outside of his home and business, uttered and possessed a forged instrument, and had knowledge with the intent to defraud and to deceive. This is what the officer says. I have reviewed surveillance video depicting the exterior of the Hilton at the above location, specifically a camera angle depicting 54th Street between 7th Ave and the Avenue of the Americas. In the surveillance footage at approximately 6:44 a.m., a man wearing a distinctive clothing outfit called the shooter approached Brian Thompson from behind, and then the shooter held what I recognize to be a firearm with a silencer attached at the end, fired it several times at Brian Thompson, causing him to collapse on the ground. I am informed by Detective Oscar Diaz that he was present for the autopsy of Brian Thompson and that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the torso. The defendant is the person shooting and killing Brian Thompson in the above described surveillance footage based upon evidence collected during the investigation. Here's what he's got. Surveillance footage that I have reviewed at a New York City hostel which depicts the same man wearing the same clothing leaving the hostel at 5:34 a.m. Surveillance footage that I have reviewed from the same hostel depicts that same man checking into the hostel on November 24th, so about 10 days before, at about 11:20 and showing a driver's license upon check-in. So that matches, right? So those photographs that we saw, one might be from that date when he showed up and smiled, and the other one might be from the shooting. I've also reviewed business records from the hostel that showed that the man provided a New Jersey's license with the name of Mark Rosario on it, the same license that he had when he was picked up at the McDonald's. I am informed by Detective Diaz that he is informed by Patrolman Tyler Fry of the Altoona Police, the guy who picked him up, that he was taken into custody at McDonald's and that he had the same driver's license, Mark Rosario, which defendant same ID that he gave to the hostel, and that in his belongings, they found a semi-automatic pistol with 3D printed loaded receiver, metal slide and silencer, and written admissions about the crime, right? As we called this, an orgy of evidence, all right in his backpack. Incredible. So then that's it. That's the statement. So false statements made are punishable as misdemeanors and other crimes. Detective Yusuf Demis signs that one off. These are the charge details, right? You can see he's now officially in the New York court system. And so we'll see if that other attorney jumps in on that one. But there's been more news on this. So he is now in custody. And I wanted to point this out, by the way. There were some YouTube channels and some videos going around saying that this guy had a YouTube channel and he was dripping out videos. Don't think that's happening. YouTube removed channels belonging to the suspected killer, and they took his own channels down, and he hadn't posted anything for the last 7 months. So there's people saying he's posting videos and stuff. That is not happening. We also see he is in custody now. Pennsylvania Department of Corrections has him there. He's housed in SCI Huntington. His inmate number is QQ7787. I did look it up, and you can see he is inside. So there he is right there. Date of birth, 1998, May 6. Height unknown, but there is his photograph at 11:08 a.m. So he's in there, Blair County, and there's some other pretty big inmates in there. We've got George Figley, a cult leader, served his sentence there from 1983 to 1998. He's not there anymore. Kermit Gosnell is a murderer. He's there. Joseph Callinger, also there, attacked another inmate with a razor-studded belt. So it's a pretty notorious place. There's a whole story on it, and that's where he'll be fighting extradition for the foreseeable future. So once we get those criminal complaints, we'll make sure we go through those and break those down accordingly.